Okay, Unit 9, Section 11, Writing Circle Equations. Now you're all going to say that the first page is stupid easy, and you're all going to hate me on the back page. So let's begin. We need to remember our circle equation. It's x minus, I used h squared plus y minus, did I use k maybe? Equals r squared. Here's h, k, and r. So really all we're doing is plugging in. So we have x minus negative 11 squared plus y minus negative 16 squared equals 3 squared. So this is going to be x plus 11 squared plus y plus 16 squared equals 3 squared. And let me check on CUDA to see if they leave it as 3 squared or if they turn it into 9. I know that's an easy thing for you guys to do, but I just want to show you or make sure I tell you what they do. Yeah, CUDA will turn this into 9. So if we were doing this by hand, honestly, I'd probably prefer you leave it like this, because then you can very quickly grab your radius. We can immediately say our radius is 3. And if we turn it into this, we can still say, well, the square root of 9 is 3 really quickly. Sometimes they aren't that obvious. Sometimes they're a little bit harder to see. So you get to choose. If you're doing it by hand, honestly, I'd probably say save the brain cells and leave it as 3 squared. But because you're doing with CUDA, they want you to square it. So, all right, there's number 1. Hopefully that's pretty easy. Number 2, I'm going to write down my equation, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So I'm going to have, whenever I plug in, x plus 1 squared, right, because it's minus minus, plus y plus 14 squared equals 2 squared. So whenever I simplify that, x plus 1 squared plus y plus 14 squared equals 4. There we are. All right, this one I'm going to skip the whole writing the equation piece. I think we can do that, or you can have that on a piece of paper next to you. Here's my h, here's my k. So I'm going to start off by having x minus 6 squared plus y plus 11 squared equals, now this one gets kind of tricky, 2 pi root 59 squared. Oh, that's the circumference. Oops. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I had problems like that. So the circumference is that. So I say, well, 2 pi root 59 equals the circumference for it formula, 2 pi r. So really quickly here, I can cancel my 2 and my pi, and I see that, well, root 59 is my radius. So this should be root 59 squared. Sorry, I didn't realize that said circumference. So really quickly, we can say, well, the root and the square cancel each other out. So I'm going to say, well, x minus 6 squared plus y plus 11 squared equals 59. There we are. All right, number 4. This one also has our circumference listed. So I'd say, well, 6 pi root 7 equals 2 pi r. Right, this is the circumference equals 2 pi r. Really quickly, I can cancel my pi's. I can cancel my 6 and my 2, and it turns into a 3 on the left. So now I have 3 root 7 equals my radius. Just to make it easy on us, I'm going to find r squared. And to do that, I'm going to square the left side. So that's going to be 9 times 7, right? You square each piece individually. 9 times 7 will be 63. Right? Now I'll be able to plug my r squared into my formula. So I have, well, x plus 9 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 63. Oops. Let me double check my answer, make sure I didn't mess up. Yep, there we are. This trick of finding your r squared is something that's sometimes useful. Honestly, whenever we're doing it on my paper, you might just want to leave it as r equals 3 root 7, and you probably end up writing something like 3 root 7 squared for your r squared if you were doing it by hand. But if you're doing it by multiple choice, you'll end up having to distribute that out, and that's useful to do. So, all right, like I said earlier, you're going to hate the first four, or excuse me, love the first four, and hate the last two. So let's begin. We have 3 points on a circle, and we're supposed to find the circle equation. Right? Before we've done 3 points on a parabola, and we had to find the parabola equation, or the quadratic. This time I'm going to go ahead and write down my circle formula, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. What we are looking for is our h, our k, and our r. In our first point, we know that the point x, or the x value, is negative 18 and the y is 18. So I could make a formula here and say, well, negative 18 minus h squared plus 18 minus k squared equals r squared. Right, I plugged in what I knew about that first equation. Second point can make us another equation. Negative 13 minus h squared plus 19 minus k squared equals r squared. And lastly, negative 12 minus h squared plus 14 minus k squared is r squared. Right. I have 3 equations for our 3 points. We have 3 equations and 3 variables, otherwise known as 3 equations, 3 unknowns, and we can solve from this. The first thing I'm going to do is start off by distributing my square out on all these. So to make it easier, how do I want to do this? I'll send it straight right. I'll do that to all 3 of them. The top one, I have 18 squared, and I'm going to need a calculator. 18 squared turns into 324. Then I'm going to have plus 18 times 2 is 36h plus h squared. What I did there is I just distributed this piece. It turned into this. If you need to, you can write out negative 18 minus h, negative 18 minus h. But it would be good for you to start to be able to do that without that, or to be able to distribute without doing that. All right, the second piece, again, I have 18 squared, so 324, and then this is going to be minus 36k plus k squared. Oops. And so this all came from this. And then I have my equals r squared. You know what? I'm going to erase these arrows. And I'm going to reduce this piece together a little bit. My constants, my 324s, can go together to be a 648. And then I'm going to say plus 36h plus h squared minus 36k plus k squared equals r squared. And that's as pretty as I'm going to be able to make that at this point. I'm going to call it my equation 1. Hopefully you remember me doing that with the parabolas that we did. All right, number 2, I'll pull it down here, and I'm going to distribute it out. So 13 squared, or I guess it's negative 13 squared, is 169. And then I'm going to have plus 26h minus, nope, it's going to be plus h squared. The second piece, I have 19 squared, which will give me 361. Then I'm going to have minus 19 times 2 is 38k plus k squared equals r squared. Just like last time, I'm going to try to make this just a little bit prettier. So 169 plus, what is that, 361 gives me 530. And then I'm just going to copy the other things out. Right? I took care of this, plus 26h plus h squared minus 38k plus k squared equals r squared. This is going to be equation number 2. All right. Lastly, I'm just going to take this equation straight down. I need to do the same thing for this one. So I'm going to have 144 plus 24h plus h squared plus, what is 14 squared? 196 plus 20, not plus, minus 28k plus k squared equals r squared. Again, just like in the first one, this corresponds to this, and this corresponds to this. Combining like terms, I take my 144 plus 196, that gives me 340, plus 24h plus h squared minus 28k plus k squared equals r squared. All right, very long. We have 3 equations here. The equations are way too long, and we need to find a way to make them simpler, or more simple. The way that I normally do this is I'm going to take 2 equations and I'm going to subtract them from each other. Whenever I subtract them, I'll be able to eliminate, if we look at, well, let's just do this. We'll do 1 minus 2. So I'm going to copy down equation 1 here. I'll do this in a different color. 648 plus 36h plus h squared minus 36k plus k squared equals r squared. And then number 2 is 530 plus 26h plus h squared minus 38k plus k squared equals r squared. All right, I copied down equation number 1 and equation number 2. Now we're going to be using elimination, if you remember that from Math 1, and we're going to subtract these two, right? So you kind of like distribute out your negative to all these pieces. So 648 minus 530 gives me 118. 36 minus 26 gives me 10. H squared minus h squared gives me 0, so I'm just not even going to write that down. And then I have negative 36k minus negative 38k, and I get plus 2k. And then I subtract my k squares and I get 0. And then I subtract my r squareds and I get 0. So this whole big equation reduces down to 118 plus 10h plus 2k equals 0, which that's a lot easier to deal with. So we have one easy equation now. I'm going to need to get another one. So I'm going to do the same process of subtracting 2 equations, and I just need to pick another pair of them, and it can't be 1 and 2 together. I'll do 2 and 3 together. You could do 1 and 3. You could do, well, I guess those are the only 2 options. I'm going to do 2 and 3. So I'm going to say 2 minus 3. Well, 2 is, I'll do this in green again, like I did last time. 530 plus 26h plus h squared minus 38k plus k squared equals r squared. Now I need to copy down 3, so I'm going to have 340 plus 24h plus h squared minus 28k plus k squared equals r squared. All right. Now again, I'm going to use elimination. How did I write that over here? The minus parentheses. Okay. Minus parentheses, and I subtract them together. So 530 minus 340, 530 minus 340 is 190. 26 minus 24 gives me 2h. My h squareds cancel. My negative 38k minus negative 28 will give me a negative 10k. My k squareds will cancel, and my r squareds will cancel. So I'm left with this equation. Now, I'm going to use my two simple equations. We have two equations, two unknowns, and we can find our h and our k. To make this a little bit easier, I'm going to solve for h down over here, and then I'll be able to plug into the other one. So if I solve for h, I'm going to have, well, 2h equals 10k minus 190, right? And then if I divide everything by 2, h is going to be 5k minus, well, what is that? 190 divided by 2 is 95. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take it all the way to the left, and I'm going to plug it into this h, right? I'll do a little arrow there. I'll do a prettier arrow than that. There we are. All right, what was it? It was 5k minus 95. All right. All I did was I plugged in h here. Now I have a unit variable equation. I have one variable in my whole equation, and I can solve. I'll distribute my 10, so I'm going to have 118 plus 50k minus 950 plus 2k equals 0. This will give me 52k, and I'll add the others over, so I have 950, and then I'm going to subtract my 118, which gives me 832. I'll divide by 52, and I get 16. K equals 16. Oops, 16. All right. The first one that we find, the first variable we find is always the hardest. Now the whole problem will go much faster. So we got my k equals 16. I'm going to pull it over here. I'm going to find my h. So h is going to be 5 times 16 minus 95. 5 times 16 minus 95 is, oops, that's not the right way. There we are. So h is a negative 15. Now we have to just find our r, and we go back to one of our original equations, equation number 1, 2, or 3. It doesn't matter which one we pick. They all have pretty huge numbers, so I'm going to just pick number 2 because it's easiest for me to read. So how do I want to do this? I'll copy it down here. I'll use another different color. So 530 plus 26 times h, which is negative 15, plus, well, that's not all going to fit there, is it? 530 plus 26h, which is negative 15, plus negative 15 squared, minus 38 times 16, plus 16 squared equals r squared. All right, nice long equation. If you notice, everything on the left is a constant, so we could just type that whole string into our calculator, and that's what I'm going to do. So 530 plus 26, parenthesis negative 15, plus 15 squared, minus 38 times 16, plus 16 squared. This gives me 13. And if you remember on the previous page, CUDA will always list it as r squared in there, so I'm not even going to do my root there. I'm just going to leave it like that. So I have my 3 variables found, and I'm just have to plug in. So I have k goes with x, right? No, k goes with y. So it's going to be x minus negative 15, so x plus 15 squared, plus y minus 16 squared equals 13. And this is our final answer. Very big problem. Let me double check and make sure that I did it correctly. X plus 15 squared, y minus 16 squared equals 13. Yep, there we are. These are very long problems, and there's lots of places to make mistakes, so you always have to go very slowly through them. All right, number 6. We're doing the same thing, and maybe I'll try to speed up just a little bit. So this is my x, this is my y, right? So I'm going to say, well, 3 minus h squared plus 0 minus k squared equals r squared. This, whenever I distribute out, is going to be 9 minus 6h plus k squared equals r squared. Well, that's kind of nice. This will be equation number 1. Then I'm going to have 3 minus h squared plus 13 minus k squared equals r squared. Whenever I distribute this out, I'm again going to have 9 minus 6h plus h squared. Oops, I'm looking back at number 1 and I made a little mistake. I need to have an h squared in there. I'm sorry. This is going to shift over a little bit. Am I able to move it? Yes. All right, there we are. Make sure you get that h squared in there. So 9 minus 6h plus h squared plus, now I'm to my 13 minus k squared piece. So 13 squared is going to be 169 minus 26k plus k squared equals r squared. We can make this just a little bit prettier by taking our 169 and our 9 together, which will be 178 minus 6h plus h squared minus 26k plus k squared equals r squared. Here's going to be equation number 2. And now we need equation number 3. So I'm going to have, well, negative 15 minus h squared plus 16 minus k squared equals r squared. Whenever I start distributing this, I start off with 15 squared is going to be 225 plus 30h plus h squared plus 16 squared, which is going to be 256, minus 30, is it 32? Yeah, 32k plus k squared equals r squared. All right, trying to make this just a little bit prettier, I'm going to use my 225 and my 256 to make a 481. Now I'm going to have my 30h plus h squared minus 32k plus k squared equals r squared. And that's going to be equation number 3. So again, we have our 3 equations. We're going to need to plug in and get two new equations that we use elimination on. So I'll start off, I'm going to do 1 minus 2. So I'm just going to copy my 2 equations down here, and I'll say, well, 9 minus 6h plus h squared. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap. That way it kind of looks a little bit better with the other equation. And it's going to say plus k squared equals r squared. All right, now for equation number 2, 178 minus 6h plus h squared minus 26k plus k squared equals r squared. All right, now we will use elimination to cancel stuff out. This one's actually going to work out really nicely. So I get 9 minus 178. 9 minus 178 gives me negative 169. My h is canceled to be 0. My h squared is canceled to be 0. And I'm going to have like 0k minus negative 26. It's going to be positive 26k. And then my k squareds will cancel, and my r squareds will cancel, so that gives me 0. So this is really actually quite awesome. I get negative 169 plus 26k equals 0. So 26k equals 169, and k is, uh-oh, am I allowed to have a decimal? You know what? I'm going to leave this as a fraction. It's going to be 169 over 26. If I reduce that, 169 ABC 26 gives me 13 halves. All right, and we're going to leave it as 13 halves. So let me circle this. All right, now that's awesome because I would say that's less work than what we did on number 5. Next up, I'm going to do another subtraction, so I'll do 2 minus 3 because they're the easiest ones for me to see whenever I zoom in. I will have 178 minus 6h plus h squared minus 26k plus k squared is r squared. And then equation number 3 is 481 plus 30h plus h squared minus 32k plus k squared equals r squared. Whenever I subtract them, I will get, okay, 178 minus 481 gives me negative 303. And then I'm going to have negative 36h. And then my h squareds cancel. And I'm going to have 32 minus 26 gives me 6k and equals 0. Now I'm going to plug in my k. K is 13 halves, so I'm going to have 6 times 13 halves. Negative 303 minus 36h plus. So 6 times 13 divided by 2 gives me 39. So it's going to be negative 303 minus 36h plus 39 equals 0. I'll add my constants to the right side. So I'm going to have 303 on the right minus 39, which gives me 264. If I divide that, it'll give me a decimal, so I'm going to do the ABC button. So 264 ABC 36 gives me 22 thirds. It's actually going to be negative also. There, so now we have 2 variables, and I need to plug in and find my third one. I'm going to use the top equation because it looks like it would be easiest. So I'm going to have 9 minus 6 times h, which is negative 22 over 3, plus negative 22 over 3 squared, plus k squared, which is 13 halves. So 13 halves squared equals r squared. So now I'm just going to type all of that on my calculator. So I'll have 9 minus 6 times parenthesis negative 22 over 3 plus parenthesis negative 22 over 3 parenthesis squared plus parenthesis 13 over 2 squared. And that gave me a huge fraction, 5365 over 36. There's my r squared. All right, wrapping it all up, I just need to write it all in one equation. I'll have x minus 13, nope, the 13 halves goes with the y. K goes with y, here I'm just going to write that. That's y, that goes with the x. So x plus 22 thirds squared plus y minus 13 halves squared equals 5365 over 36. And there we are. These problems take a long time to do. They take a lot of paper. You're not going to be required to do too many of them, though. So, all right, that's that.